Hey everybody! In today's video, we are going to do a little composing of a watercolor still life, but with stamps. And I'm just going to warn you now, something really horrifying happens during this video, so you have been warned. I started by stamping the full apple image. Actually, no, I'm lying. I stamped the little apple piece image and I masked it with masking paper. Then I stamped the full apple image on top of that, masked that, and now I'm stamping a second apple. It's exactly the same apple. I just turned it on its side. So these are in our no line coloring ink, and I'm going to watercolor them. So it's going to look just like a little watercolor still life, but you don't have to draw, which, as you know, is my favorite. So to begin with, I will color the big apple, and you can see that my brush, either my brush or my water, was a little bit dirty, so I want you to pretend like this is some nice clean water. Doesn't matter because this is actually the color that I'm starting with, so it's fine. And I'm dropping in, this is actually rich green gold. I know it looks like yellow, but it's rich green gold. It has a very warm hue to it. And that's going to be the base color of my apple and also the highlight color. So then I will come in with a red. I'm actually using some of my splits that I don't use typically in these videos. A lot of times I will use either the Lydia split or my D split if I'm doing botanicals, but since I'm doing fruit, I am digging into my A and B splits for these colors. And this is actually pretty simple. I'm just using a few colors here. So I'm leaving an area of highlight, and I go back when you sort of get those little creepers into the lighter area. I just go back and just touch a dry brush to them to kind of calm down that texture a little bit. Now I am dropping in actually raw umber, and I know that's probably a surprise to be shading with brown on an apple, but it is also the color I'm going to use in the stem, and so you know my philosophy of always shading with colors that are present elsewhere in the painting, because that gives you a lot of harmony. That's what I like to do. I've even mixed some of the red with the raw umber, and that makes for a really pretty shading color too. Now I have a really dirty brush for my so-called clean water for the leaf. Also, it doesn't matter. I had a little bit of the raw umber on there. And then I am dropping in some green apatite. This is a granulating color that I love to use for foliage because it's just so interesting. It gives you little grains of a dark green, brown. It's just beautiful, really interesting. But I am going to go on top of that with the same rich green gold to warm it up just a bit because it is a pretty cool green. So now we are approaching the terrifying portion of the program. So please make sure you've put all your beverages down and you're ready for what's coming up. This is your first warning. I'll give you another warning. I'm doing the apple slice, and this is actually a pretty simple operation here because there's so little skin showing on this image, so I just do that in the scarlet. And then I'm really doing a sharp outline with the raw umber of that little seed. And I will come back with some buff titanium to fill in the apple slice prior to the terror that is about to befall all of us. Now I have my thinnest, tiniest little brush. This is a great detail brush, and I'm adding just a few little stripes to the apple. It looks very realistic. I really like it. So now I'm coming back with the raw umber on the stem, and I will actually add burnt umber on top of this because it gives it some warmth and just makes it pretty. So now I will paint the second apple. I'm going to do this exactly the same way, I'm going to make it a little bit darker with a little bit less of a highlight, but I am still starting with that same color, the rich green gold. This one will go much faster. I had already done the leaf prior, so this is just filling in a very simple round shape. This is very, very easy to do. The highlight will be on the same side of the apple, I'm just going to leave less room for it. It's going to be a little bit less prominent. And I'm also dropping in more of the raw umber as a shading mechanism because I want that front apple to be just a little bit lighter. So here I'm putting clean water down and then dropping the buff titanium into various areas of this cut apple because you do get that oxidation. So this is where disaster strikes me. You can see the apple slice looking so unblemished right before this incredible moment where I innocently put down and pick up a little bit of my red pigment to do some innocent, without a care in the world, shading at the top of apple number 1. Look how careful I'm being. Look how precise. Look at the control that I have over my paintbrush. The lesson there is life can change in a moment, and you got to be ready to come back from it, which I'm doing by scrubbing out the blot of shame and lifting it with a towel. Luckily, the area that it fell in is mostly shadow, where I really dropped the big blob of it. But the other area, because I got it on the little apple slice as well, it's fine if it has a little tinge of pink. It's an apple. So it's really no big deal. And I would like to bust the myth that watercolor is not a forgiving medium. It absolutely is a forgiving medium. So anyway, I'm warming up the leaves. I've recovered. Everything's fine. I'm adding the rich green gold to the leaves. I am deepening the well that the stem sits in, and I'm putting in some wet on dry shading there at the bottom of the apple. It instantly makes it look much more dimensional. I'm finishing the stem on the other apple the same way with burnt umber over some raw umber on the stem. And I'm painting the sort of darker well on this apple with burnt umber instead of red. Is that PTSD from dropping a loaded red paintbrush on my painting? I don't really think that's anybody's business. I mean, we have HIPAA for a reason, but yes, it is. So it's starting to come together rather nicely. So I will put in the grounding layer, which will also cover up my mistake. I always start this with clean water, and then I put in a neutral. You've seen me do this 1,000 times. Always start your grounding with a neutral, but then add back in the colors that are present in the objects that are sitting on the grounding. So in this case, there's red, there's green, there's the rich green gold with that yellow, and I just randomly drop those in, and it makes for a much more interesting shadow and grounding piece. I always finish by kind of futzing around with the deep dark shadows. I think it makes a big difference. Anywhere where I can make kind of a stark, almost black color, it will kind of move your eye around the piece and make it more interesting to look at. I'm also scrubbing out some kind of hard lines that I had gotten at the top of the grounding. I just do this with clean water, and you can soften that right down. So again, with watercolor being a forgiving medium, it absolutely is. So that pretty much finishes it. Even though I could micromanage it forever, I will not. I'll count my blessings that I didn't drop another paintbrush on it. So here is the finished painting. Head over to my blog for more information, and thanks so much for watching.